Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Big John Fury, the father of Tyson Fury, on Alexander Usyk stated, he's trying to turn the public against Tyson Fury, which they've done a good job of because the public's daft anyway. Look what wonders he's done for his country, and now look how quickly they turn and support a total foreigner.
What the fuck has Tyson Fury done for his country?
Isn't Tyson Fury the same guy that once said he's turning his back on the United Kingdom and those fans because of how he was treated right around the time that he fought Deontay Wilder the first time and jumped into bed with Top Rank?
What the fuck has Tyson Fury done for his country?
The influx of interest in the British boxing scene and British boxers isn't due to anything that Tyson Fury did. No, quite the opposite. Anthony Joshua and the Klitschko fight many years ago is what caused that, the influx of revenue and interest in the British boxing scene.
That's what opened all of that up.
Remembering the metrics and viewership that heavyweight title fight garnered right here in the US of A on not just one, but two, count them, two premium cable networks, HBO, who was in boxing at that time, and Showtime.
Before the Joshua versus Klitschko fight, you didn't have the same kind of interest here in the US of A, American interest in British boxers before that heavyweight title fight. That fight was a game changer.
That's the fight that opened up the British boxing scene to the rest of the world, and while all of that was going on, Tyson Fury was on hiatus. He had walked away from the sport for something like 2 or close to 2 years after the Klitschko fight, following the first one.
Which nobody liked, by the way. It was by and large one of the worst heavyweight title fights I'd ever seen.
The only fight worse than Fury versus Klitschko would have to be Fury versus Parker. Huey Fury versus Joseph Parker. That's the only fight on par with Tyson Fury's.
Fury versus Klitschko was a stinker. Monumental achievement that might have been for Tyson Fury. The fight itself, the fight's aesthetic, is fucking horrible. It's not a fight I find myself going back to watch periodically. Quite the opposite. I can count on one hand how many times I've seen that fight, and I don't aspire to see it again.
Curious admissions from Big John Fury, who acknowledges that the British boxing fans have turned against Tyson Fury in favor of Alexander Usyk, claiming that it's Alexander Usyk that turned them against Fury.
Oh, it wasn't Fury himself dicking around and wasting people's time? It seems like the fight fans in the UK finally got hip to Tyson Fury's shenanigans, his shtick.
They don't want to put up with it anymore. He's strayed too far away from what brings us all here, and that's the fights themselves. Don't get it in your head that you're bigger than the sport of boxing when the sport of boxing is the only reason we know who you are.
We put up with you.
Your insufferable personality. Tyson Fury tried to do to Alexander Usyk what he already does to Anthony Joshua. And the difference is this time it didn't work because people have become acquainted, become familiar with Alexander Usyk over time, and they know this is not a hard guy to get into the ring.
No.
This is not a hard guy to deal with.
No.
John Fury has said Tyson Fury won't fight Alexander Usyk until he makes a public apology. Unless he gets on video and tells the truth of what he did, there will never be a fight for Usyk.
Team Usyk have spoken about the fight's collapse more than once, and oddly enough, they haven't necessarily attacked Tyson Fury in the same abundance that he's attacked them.
This is one of those arguments that requires you to remove all context and all common sense in order for Tyson Fury to not be culpable, to not be responsible, because if you apply common sense, you can see exactly what happened here.
Anyone can.
Now the fight hangs in the balance, quote unquote hangs in the balance. If Alexander Usyk doesn't apologize to Tyson Fury, Fury won't fight him, in spite of all the money that he could make in Saudi Arabia, all the money the Saudis are willing to give him.
I told you these people weren't committed to that fight, and they're just looking for any excuse to walk away from it.
John Fury is just helping to set the table, set the stage for when December gets here. If Tyson Fury doesn't fight Alexander Usyk and he doesn't accept Skills Challenge's offer, this'll be the reason.
They're getting their story straight.
They're demanding an apology. According to John Fury, it'll be when he apologizes for trying to put the blame on Tyson.
This is kid stuff.
The takeaway from all of this is that John is acknowledging the boxing community has turned against Tyson Fury and they're still looking to save face.
The last couple of weeks, Tyson Fury's been abroad.
Trying to get away from that British boxing public, in my humble opinion. Trying to get away from things. He was recently in Australia, rooting his buddy on, Joseph Parker. Then he went from Australia over to Thailand.
Fuck's in Thailand.
It's been my opinion, he's trying to get away from things. They're fully aware the boxing community has turned on them, and they're running out of ideas.
It's very easy to shame Anthony Joshua, to lambast him for losing 2 fights to Alexander Usyk. Yeah, that's easy, but why don't you get in there with him and show us how it's done then?
Why don't you take on Usyk?
Seems to be more interested in fighting Anthony Joshua than fighting the only other champion at this weight, and the veil has been lifted.
Because that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't still be barking up that tree trying to get a Joshua fight. If you're the fighting man that you say you are, the only fight that should matter to you is the Usyk fight. And it's not like there's no money involved.
There is.
There's lots of money involved.
There is.
Could be a PR nightmare for Tyson Fury. It could be. If this year comes and goes and he doesn't fight Usyk towards the end of it, because there really are no excuses.
And no alternatives.
Anthony Joshua is about to fight Dillian Whyte for the second time. That if all goes well, he'll face Deontay Wilder towards the end of the year. You don't have him to turn to.
You already fought Dillian. You already fought Wilder. You and Usyk are the last 2 men standing. He wants to fight. What do you want to do?
You want an apology.
What kind of pretty little princess is Tyson Fury to demand an apology?
Excuse me. It's not even Tyson Fury demanding one. It's his father trying to clean up his own messes because he can't do it himself.
Pathetic.
So it could have been avoided. Could have been circumvented if he was more committed to the Usyk fight. But what time is proving is that he's not committed to that fight. He was never committed to that fight. And he's nothing but a con man. A shyster.
He tried to turn the public against Usyk the same way he tries to turn the public against Anthony Joshua, except this time it blew up in his face.
And why do both Tyson Fury and his father periodically bring up that Usyk is a foreigner? So what if he is?
Is that supposed to exonerate you of culpability?
Men's super lightweight news ahead of his Matchroom debut this weekend. Regis Prograis says, put me in with Matias, Teo, Rolly, I would beat them.
Probably would, but Romero's chasing Ryan Garcia.
Matias is supposed to be fighting Rancis Bartholomew, and Teofimo Lopez claims that he's retired.
It's the gist of it.
It's not hard to focus because when you fight someone that people say is lesser than you, those are the dangerous fights and the hard ones. As soon as you don't know what they have got and you need to perform against them, said Prograis, people do pull off upsets. I'm not looking past him, Danielito Zorrilla, but you have in your mind that there's these massive fights out there, but I know that I won't get them unless I take care of my business on Saturday. So until then, I don't think about anyone else because you might not get there. There's pressure on me already as I'm fighting at home in New Orleans. My people are coming to see me, and yes, Teo has done his thing against Josh, so I feel that I am the best at 140, but Teo deserves his credit, and I give that to him. So I must go out and look great and prove that I am the best.
Styles make fights.
Teofimo Lopez beat Josh Taylor, who beat Regis Prograis some years ago, but that doesn't mean here today that beating today's Josh Taylor
means he would beat today's Regis Prograis.
Regis continued, you can't control what people think. Some may say I'm the best. Some will now say Teo, Matias. Some might even say Rolly. I still feel I'm the best. You put me in with Rolly, I beat him. Put me in with Teo, I beat him. Put me in with Matias, I beat him. We can't prove that until we fight, but that's how I feel, and the only way to prove it is to fight each other.
Some are already crowning Teofimo Lopez a 2-time undisputed champion, not being in possession of the other belts, like the one that Regis has, and Subriel, and even Rolly.
That's not how this works. You don't get to call yourself an undisputed champion if there are other champions at your weight. I mean, that's the whole fucking point, that you've cleaned out the division, you've cleaned out the weight class.
That there's no dispute. You're the only champion at the weight. And last I checked, Teofimo is one of 4 champions.
Not one of one. Regis Prograis wants that unification. He's saying, I've got to fight Teofimo Lopez. But does Teofimo Lopez, does he want to fight him? Or does he feel that because he's a self-proclaimed undisputed champion, he doesn't have to fight the other guys?
Is that what that's about?
I gotta fight Teo, said Prograis to BoxingScene.com. I've got to fight Teo. I've got to for sure. I think that would be a huge fight. Me and Teo have got to fight. We gotta fight.
Teofimo Lopez was able to use Josh Taylor's aggression against against him, setting him up for punches and counter shots.
Even though Josh Taylor was the naturally bigger fighter, because Josh Taylor was the one giving chase, that allowed Teofimo to shift his weight to his back foot and set him up for counters coming in.
His conditioning held up. He stayed the sharper, faster fighter with the better reflexes throughout the course of the match, while Josh Taylor's speed, that waned.
He started off all right, got off to an aggressive start, but around the middle of the match, the middle of the fight, he started to fizzle out.
Sounds like a conditioning issue.
Irrespective of how his camp might have went and how he felt in camp preparing for Teofimo, under the hot lights, he fizzled out. And that sounds like he's outgrown the division, outgrown the weight. Regis, on the other hand,
He's fine.
Josh Taylor, a different fighter than Regis Prograis. Regis is more of a counterpuncher than, say, Josh Taylor.
Not saying Josh Taylor can't work off the counter, he just doesn't do it as often as Regis Prograis. That's why you'd label Regis a counterpuncher more than Josh.
Josh, at his very best, is giving chase and crowding the other man mid-range to inside, whereas Regis Prograis, he can lay off a bit, set a guy up a bit, land hard, and then go in for the kill, like he did with Jose Zepeda.
Him and Teo have that in common. They both roll punches off the shoulder, both set up counter shots.
I definitely want that fight for sure. I can't overlook Zorrilla, but after that, hopefully I can fight Teo.
The sooner Regis Prograis fights Teofimo Lopez, the better, because he's many years older than Teofimo. Teofimo's got time on his side.
Regis doesn't. He's in his mid-30s. Regis Prograis, who says, Lopez got terrible money for the Taylor fight, can make 10 times more to fight me.
You'd have to be a wide-eyed optimist to think that Lopez versus Prograis is next. It's not.
I think Teofimo looked sensational with Josh Taylor, but Regis Prograis is not Josh Taylor. It's a very different fight. You have to look out for very different things.
You do?
No, I don't think he's retiring. I think he's frustrated. He said he got paid $1 million to fight Josh Taylor. That's terrible. That is terrible money. So I don't think he's going to retire. If me and him fight, he'll probably get 10 times what he got. So I don't think he's going to retire, Prograis said to FightHype.com.
I don't think he's retiring either. I just think that's a money play, a way for him to siphon more money out of Top Rank to get him back in the ring.
He hasn't made enough from that last fight with Josh Taylor to retire on, and if he were serious about retiring, he'd chuck the WBO Ring Magazine titles in the air, then sail off into the sunset.
If he were retired.
But he hasn't. He's hanging on to those titles, hanging on to those belts, because that's leverage, and he needs that moving forward. To get paid the way he wants to get paid, he needs the titles he took from Josh Taylor.
Precisely.
There are too many big fights out there for him. I think it's a cry for help right now, because you know what he's going through. He still has mental issues now. With the divorce and the child custody case, he can fight for sure, but it's still like he has things going on. He only made $1 million to fight the former undisputed champion. It just makes no sense. But I don't think he's going to retire. I definitely don't think he's going to retire. He likes money. His dad likes money. So you know they're going to come back. They might say they're retiring right now, but that's probably how he was feeling at that moment in time. I think for sure he'll come back because he can't walk away from the biggest fight of his life.
There's more money to be made in a potential Haney fight, a Prograis fight, a Ryan Garcia fight, a fight that Teofimo says he blew off,
But a fight that could get him a big fucking purse.
the Lopez's redeemed themselves this weekend.
Not just Teofimo, but his father. Teofimo Lopez, who credits his father for the new strategy with the win over Tosh Jailer.
2 fights before that one, most people were saying that Teofimo needs an addition to his corner because he's reached his ceiling with his father.
To that, Teofimo is crediting his father for the winning strategy. What helped the best was that he figured out the problem, Lopez said on the Porterweight podcast. He was looking at a sparring I did with former welterweight titleist Yordenis Lugas. When I was sparring with Lugas, he noticed, wait, you weren't throwing a punch every 2 seconds. So that was the problem, throwing so many punches. I had to throw a punch every 2 seconds, meaning like a jab or something, just so I can stop the fighter from doing what he's doing. But it was actually only good when I was facing Lomachenko. But it doesn't work with every other fighter, you know? Loma, but he moves around a lot. You've got to be active with him. But all these other fighters, they were just trying to wait on me and trying to counter. I'm the best counter puncher in the game. I'm kingpin at that.
This accents what I told you guys before, that Lomachenko being such a prolific puncher, you have to fight him off.
If you don't, he's going to lead the dance, whereas with some other fighters that are not as prolific, not as busy, you can set those fighters up for counters. These other fighters, they were just trying to wait on me to counter. I'm the best counter puncher in the game. I'm kingpin at that. That's what we was missing, and he took that away from me. After he figured that out watching him, my sparrings from when I was younger, that actually happened like 3 weeks before my fight. And I thank God so much because that gave me the blueprint, and it took so much of the pressure off of me to always think about throwing a punch, because then I'm not analyzing the fighter, and I'm not studying his moves. I'm not feinting. I'm not doing nothing but throwing jabs and trying to stay on that consistent throw a punch every 2 seconds.
Do you remember what I told you? Lopez on the front foot ain't the same as Lopez on the back foot. Lopez on the back foot is the best Lopez, setting up a hard counter, then moving in.
As opposed to throwing for the sake of throwing, activity for the sake of activity while moving in, like what we saw in the George Kambosos fight that got him dropped, and like what we saw in the Sandor Martin fight.
Got dropped 2 more times.
At his very best,
yes,
Teofimo Lopez is a boxer puncher and a counter puncher. He goes in there looking for a knockout, he does, but he's got to set it up.
At his best, that's what he does.
And that's what he was able to do to Tosh Jailer, a characteristically aggressive mid-range to inside fighter that likes to crowd his opponents. Even though he's taller and longer than Teofimo, seems like Team Lopez knew. He's going to try to lead the dance.
Yeah.
He's going to try to come in, and that's our opportunity to catch him.
He's not going to stay long and loose on the outside using his height and using his length. He's going to give up that height to fight us in the pocket.
A winning strategy. Team Lopez needed this win. I shudder to think what mental state he'd be in had he lost that fight this past Saturday. That's why I didn't want to leave my father, because I knew there was something that we weren't connecting with, but we could fix it in due time, Lopez added. Just gotta have faith in it. The difference you saw in the Teofimo from the Sandor Martin and George Kambosos fights and the one you saw last Saturday is the one last Saturday, he wasn't the one pursuing the opponent. He wasn't the one giving chase. Not up until he lands a hard counter he can step into.
He's not a pressure fighter.
But in moments, in fights where he tries to apply pressure and simply step into his punches, step into them and try to run over his opponents like he did with George and like he did with Sandor, he leaves himself open to be countered. When he's the one doing the countering,
he's on his game.
At his best. And what you saw in the Josh Taylor fight is he didn't have to go out there and find Josh. Josh was attempting to bring the fight to him whilst fading round by round. Fading over time. Teofimo Lopez staying the sharper fighter.
Quicker.
Laying off. Looking to set traps. It worked out for Teofimo. Opposite the ring Regis Prograis, it's a little different because they have some of the same tendencies. Oh, there are differences. Regis is a southpaw and Teofimo's an orthodox fighter.
Teofimo's got speed, whereas Regis has got strength.
What you'd be looking at with those two is 2 boxer punchers with an affinity for counterpunching. But because they're both counterpunchers, somebody's gonna have to lead the dance, and that comes with risks.
It's a fascinating fight if they could make it.